We'll do a review in the Sichas in volume 28. This is the second Sicha in Parshas Behalosecha, and this is learned Lilu Nishmas Rav HaChosid Rav Levi Yitzchok ben Rabbi Chaim Tzvi, a dedicated shliach and successful shliach who was taken in the prime of his life. And this learning is to benefit his soul, to hein nishmosei tzrura b'tzrei Chaim. This is really basically also a Rashi Sikha, but the Rebbe explains, and there's such a gewaldige Chiddush explanation of the Rebbe that the Rashi doesn't make sense on the surface to the extent that most of the commentaries they fix the version in Rashi. This talks about how the korban Pesach should be brought or eaten by the people who were Tameh, and the Rashi seems to say that the Pesach should be eaten by the Tmeim, and everybody knows that Tameh can't eat the korban Pesach. So why is Rashi saying that? It's different than the Sifri. The Rebbe says that the Rebbe's Chiddush here is in the Sikha that the korban Pesach at the first time wasn't really a korban Pesach, and the second time, when we're talking about in the Parshas Behalosecha Bashon Hashenis, in the second time they made the korban Pesach, it was similar to the first one. It didn't have the status of a korban, and therefore, just like a Tomei can eat the matzah and the morer, they thought that maybe the Pesach could be eaten as well, not as a korban Pesach. And the Rebbe points out the language the whole time is Maisa Pesach, Maisa Pesach. Only afterwards it talks about korban Pesach. But we'll go step by step, and we see how the Rebbe explains so beautifully every aspect of the Rashi over here, and the whole idea is what was going on. We'll go step by step. Aleph. In Haitiker Sedre, in this week's portion, noch dem wie the Torah der zählt. After the Torah relates, wegen dem Pesach she'osu Yisrael b'midbar, the Pesach that the Yidden made in the Midbar, that was when they were journeying in the Midbar, the second year, Bashona Hashenis, let's say Someres Mitzrayim. The second year after going out of Mitzrayim, this was again at the 14th day of Nisan, the second year, a whole year has passed by. So they made the Pesach. It says in the pasuk, "Vahi anoshim asher hoyu l'tmeim asher hoyu tmeim l'nefesh adam." So there were the people that were impure because they had touched a body and they became tamei. And they could not make the Pesach because they were tamei. So they said, comes to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they say, "Anachnu tmeim lenefesh adam." We are tamei, the nefesh adam. We become tamei. We touch the dead body. But lama nigora. Why should we lose out the bilti hakriv as korban Hashem b'moyedoi, not to bring the korban of Hashem in its time? Okay, that's what the pasuk says. So the Rebbe first wants to understand, they're saying, why should we lose out? Loma nigora. Why should we lose out? We're Tomei, why should we lose out? But they give the answer, why should we lose out? Because we are Tomei. So that's the reason why they're losing out. So why are they asking Loma nigora? Darf man verstehen, in was ist verstanden sehr teine Loma nigora? What consisted their argument? Why should we lose out? They allein haben doch madgish given. They themselves emphasized. Und als Hagdama to their Taina Gufa, and as an introduction to this argument itself, they said, Anachnu Tmeim Lenefesh Adam. So they're saying they are Tomei for a Nefesh Adam. So they are Tomei. Dos haste. That means they're telling the story that this is the reason why they cannot bring the Korban Pesach, because they're Tomei. Das heißt, sie haben gewusst, dass das ist die Sibbe, They knew that that is the reason. Truly, they cannot machen them Pesach. That's why they can't make the Pesach. They could not make the Pesach because they were tummy. As they were instructed before. Anybody who was Tomei Nefesh was not allowed to be in the camp. The boss is the time to bring the carbon. Boss is the time So what did they say? Why should we lose out if they know why they are losing out? So that's why. What is it that they're complaining? So they know why they can't bring that because they're talking. So what do they want with Loma Nigara? So Rashi is Mevayim. So Rashi explains it as follows. Loma Nigara, they said Loma Nigara. Amar Lahem. There's a whole lengthy Rashi explanation that there was a discussion going on, which the Rebbe will explain. They said Loma Nigara. Amar Lahem. So Moshe Rabbeinu said to them, Ein kochim karevim betuma. You can't bring kochim while you're tummy. As if they didn't know that. We'll see. Amrullah, so they said, Yizrei kadam aleinu bekohanim tahirim. Let them sprinkle the blood for us. In other words, when they bring the korban and they sprinkle the blood, they should do it with the kohanim that are tahir. V'yoichal habasar litmein. And then the meat should be eaten for the tmein. So the way it seems in the pasuk is, yes, they're tummy, so the pashtus. So who says that they can't be part of the korban pesach? The kohanim who are toher will sprinkle the blood in the time of the korban pesach, and they will eat the meat when they're tummy. At nighttime, they'll eat the meat of the korban. Seems very odd. How could they eat the meat? A person who is tummy can't eat a korban. So Mefarshim say, as does was state in Rashi, v'yoichal habosar l'tmeim, when it says you eat for the tummy, can't be that, is a tohu sefer. It's a mistake of the scribe. So a tummy is not allowed to eat kochim. What does it mean, yoichal habosar l'tmeim? And the way it really needs to say, as it's written in the Sifri, which is the mokken from the Pirush Rashi, which is the source of Rashi. The argument is you should be sprinkling the blood with the kahanim tohirim, and they should beat the meat for the tohirim. And as they explained, that really they were going to become tohir at nighttime. They were tamei on the 14th while they were sprinkling the blood. But at the nighttime, they would be already toil. So let them sprinkle the blood on them, be part of the korban Pesach while they're tamei. But then by come the nighttime, when they'll become toil, they'll be able to eat it. That's what they explain. Mozayin and Masvir, they explain. What does Rashi mean that the meat will be eaten by the toirim? Is al derech v'malerent ein in Sifri is similar to the way we interpret it in the Sifri. Leutman the Omar, according to the opinion, aschal shvi shalahem. These people that came to argue about Lamanigora, they were busy actually with the burial and their seventh day of purification would have to wait till they become the Efer Pora on the seventh day by Shvi Yitor. So at nighttime, the seventh day turned out to be Fun Itmeim Lenefesh Odom Liyis at a Pesach. That was at a Pesach on the 14th. So they were Tomei the Mele Kenan Ze Belel Pesach Shenessen. So therefore, on the night of Pesach, they already can eat. Because they're already clean by then. Und das ist given sehr tiny. So what was their argument? They said, Loma Nigora. So their tiny was like this. Yizrek Adam Aleinu Chulu. Let the blood be sprinkled by us with the Kohanim. Tahirim. The Yochel HaBasar L'Tahirim. Afal Pi was beyond Yudala Zayin and Zay Noch Tmei. Even though that on the day of the 14th they're still Tamei. Only at nighttime will they come Tahir. Kemen of Bezerik Zayin of Zaydem Dam. So you can still sprinkle on them, it's their korban, the blood that is brought during the 14th. Since when the time comes to eat the Pesach, which is Belel Chamisha also been Nisan, the night of the 15th, they'll already be tired. That's how they explain the Rashi, not Yoichal Litmeim, you're not allowed to eat them. It's Yoichal Litahirim, because at that point they'll be tired already, as they interpret in the Sifri, that this was the 7th day, and they were able to become tired for the nighttime, and let the dam be sprinkled. That's what they said, Lama Nigara. But that Pirush is Tzarech Yigara. This interpretation needs a lot of looking into. There's a lot of clarification. But Aleph, number one, if Rashi means that's the Pshat Loma Nigora, because they were saying Rashi the Montnit Afilu Nid Beremes, Rashi mentions not, even not in a hint, as Chal Shvi Shalem Li Yisera Pesach, that the 7th day was Erev Pesach, and they were able to become clean on that day and eat at nighttime, eat the Korban Pesach base. But other than they weren't there, tiny is noch given, anachnu tmeim goimer, we are Tomei Lamonigora. So they're saying they know that they're Tomei. Why should we be missing out? They're not saying we're going to be Toher. They're not arguing that they're going to be Toher. They said we're Tomei, nor verkehrt, as Afal Pi was anachnu tmeim goimer, even though they are Tomei von deswegen. And still, why shouldn't we bring? So, can't learn, as the Mefarshim will explain the Rashi, that they said we're already going to be tired by the daytime, so they wanted to eat because of that. That couldn't have been the argument, the Rebbe says, because otherwise they should have argued, not we're tummy, but that we're going to be tired. And besides the fact, there's no mention anywhere that they're going to become tired at the 7th day. So, we can't say this is Rashi's Pshat. There's another interpretation that Rebbe brings down in his base. What does it mean that the Tahirim will eat it? Other people will eat it. So, not that it's going to be in their stead. The Yechlu Tahirim also, they fix in the gears, meaning other people. The Kohanim will makriv it, and other people will eat it, but it'll count for them. And that was their argument. Andere lernen dem Pshat in Divrei Sifri. Other people learn, what does the Sifri mean? V'abosar nechal or yochel l'toirim. The basar will be eaten to toirim. What does that mean? Sheyimnu shar anoshim imohem ala Pesach v'yechlu shar anoshim, so that other people will join in together with them, be part of the counting of the Korban Pesach, and other people lead it. Thus haste the zrike v'zayin oich oivzei. The sprinkling will be for them as well. It made. And therefore they brought the Korban of Hashem in time, because they were part of this in which the Korban is sprinkled. When the Achilas HaPesach will be eaten through others who are Toher. And then we also understand what the Sifri brings later on, that this is something which we find by a chatos, a korban chatos, even though the people are still tamei, yet the Kohanim sprinkled the blood, and the meat of the chatos is eaten by the kohanim. Anyways, the kochi it's eaten by the kohanim. So we see somebody else eats the meat, and the smote is sprinkled by the kohanim, but it counts for the woman giving birth or for the mitzvah. So we see that even if somebody's tame, you can sprinkle for them, and somebody else can eat it. And if them bring their sifri, them kalvachomer fun chatos. He brings a foratory from a chatos, which is a more serious carbon. Was dama nizrak al hatuma. The blood is sprinkled for the tuma, meaning hatmein. It's people that are tame. Sometimes the carbon chatos uh, is for people that are tame. And then the meat is eaten, those who are clean, and the person, it's a carbon for the chatos. Choch the bailim, although the owners, those who bring the korban, which is the ledus mitzayda, in this case, when they bring the korban chatos, they are tame, seine noch tame. Von deswegen is dama nizrak ala tuma. The dama, the blood is sprinkled on tuma. Ubesor nechel ta'irim, and the meat is eaten for the ta'irim, the kohanim ta'irim. So, what is it such a problem? This is the way they explain the Sifri, that the argument was, let they be part of the korban pesach, the blood is sprinkled for them, and somebody else will eat it. So based on this, like they learned the Sifri, we can say this is what Rashi means as well. That the meat will be eaten for those that are toir, as andere nit vi anachnu tmeim. Others who are not like we, who are tomei nor toirim unless the Pesach, they'll eat the Pesach. But the Rebbe says by korban Pesach it doesn't really work, because the whole idea of Pesach that you have to eat the korban Pesach is not like by a chatas, which you're just bringing an offering because the Eibishter says you have to bring a chatas. Over here you're bringing it so to eat it. If Rashi means that's why you have to count. How are you going to count on a korban that you can't eat, and that you're not fit, that you won't be able to eat? Somebody else will eat it. You can't really do that. It's difficult to say. But seemingly it's difficult to interpret such in Rashi's commentary. Because the main idea of the Pesach, even in the literal meaning, is achilas ha-Pesach, is to eat the Pesach. It's not just a korban. It's the eating of the Pesach. Because the far muzayin minu. That's why, how do you become part of the korban Pesach? You must count on it. Ish lifi ochloi tochoisu alaseh. Every person, based on how much they eat, should be counting and participating, being part of that sheep that they're bringing. Ubemele. So how is this going to help them? What is their oiftu for Yizrek Adam? They're not eating it. And so what is the counting on this says? What does that mean? What is their oiftu for Yizrek Adam Aleinu? What is it going to help if they're going to be counted on it? That when the main mitzvah, eating Pesach, is not going to be there. And so besides the point, so they're not going to eating, so what's the point? You just do. And the Rebbe says you can't actually count on the seh to be part of the sprinkling of the blood of the seh if we know that you can't eat it. Nochmer. Furthermore, since you need to count on the Pesach noch Eder before you bring him, so therefore simply we have to say as dervos is nit bechlal from lifyachle, the one who is not included according to it. In other words, they can't eat their tummy. Nitroit achilas haPesach is not fit to eating the Pesach. He can't even be counted. He's not even able to be counted on the Pesach. Ubemele kemen of him nit zorig sein dem dam, and therefore you can't pour the blood on him. So A is not going to be uh, doing the mitzvah itself of eating the Pesach, which is the main mitzvah. And number two, we can't even pour the blood on him, technically speaking, because if he can't eat, what are we counting for? So he's not part of it. And this is actually the difference, as the Meforshim explained, between the Sifri brings by Achatos, because by Achatos, there's no thing. She has to be the Korban Chatos. Over here, they have to eat it. You can't become part of sprinkling of the blood if you can't eat it. And that's what the Eibishter's answer. That's why the Eibishter did not accept it. As Meforshim explained, as the Farot Moshe Rabbeinu nit ongenu mazer kal v'chomer from Chatos. That is why Moshe Rabbeinu did not accept their kal v'chomer from Chatos. He said, let me hear what Hashem said. Hashem gave him Pesach Sheni. But he said he didn't accept it, weil Bachatos seinen doch die Kohanim oichlim. Over there, who has to eat it? The Bible don't even eat it. They're not allowed to eat it, Kochim. Only the Kohanim eat it. So, therefore, it's okay. You could sprinkle the blood for the woman, for the Mitzvah, for the people, for the Bailim, and the Kohanim can eat it because they're the one that are eating it. Need the Bailim to make. Unafilu by Kochim Kalim, and even by Kochim Kalim, in which not only the Kohanim, the owners also eat some. Vusis do achilas bailim, where there is eating by Kochim, which are Kochim Kalim, like Ashlomim, and they do get a part of it. But that eating is not hold back. Is doch the achila aninim v'sidid ma'akev zrikas adam. That eating does not hold back the sprinkling of the blood. In other words, if you sprinkled the blood and you didn't eat, the bailim didn't eat the korban, it's still a good korban. So therefore, is memeil and itok in ra'ida fun of korban Pesach, but iker mitzvosi is achilas bailim. The main mitzvah by korban Pesach is that bailim to eat. So, what are you going to say? Asmin can zoyrig zayin of bailim v'chazani droitz achilas ha-Pesach, that you can sprinkle for owners that are not fit to eat Pesach. So that's why Moshe Rabbeinu didn't accept. By Achatos, with the Kohanim eat it, over there it's okay. But by Korban Pesach, which mainly Achilas Abaylim, over there, you can't sprinkle blood if they're not going to eat it. And that's why he didn't accept it. So this whole idea that the Loma Negora and Rashi is because they wanted the other people to eat it. It doesn't really fit. That's not a good spot for a Korban Pesach. How could we say that? That's not. So that doesn't really fit. And on top of that, the Rebbe says there's no mention of Rashi. Rashi, though in our Rashi is nitoki remes afilu oif kolonal. There's not even a hint for all the above that their loma negora is to be eating by the tahirim through other people. They're going to have the blood, and they're going to other people. The Rashi doesn't say that, and that should be yotze, and that's the way they're going to be fulfilling the Korban Pesach. There's no hint for this, so we can't answer that way. And the Rebbe wants to explain it by first asking several other questions in the Rashi, which will give the Rebbe the clue to the answer what Rashi's shot is. Gimel. Rashi will understand this by having several questions in Rashi's language. Aleph. Rashi is maitig blois de verter lomo nigora. Rashi quotes just the words lomo nigora. It doesn't even say etc. But why is Rashi only quoting that? Mit sein Pirush Yizre Kadam Chulu. Rashi's explanation that should bring the blood is Rashi Mefarish the weiter die Keverter. Rashi is explaining the words that follow. Loma Nigora lebilti hakri ves Korban Hashem. Why should we lose out not to bring the Korban Hashem? That's what we're trying to explain over here. And he's saying Yizroik Hadam, a bit Kohanim Tahirim. So that is explaining the Korban of Hashem. Why does Rashi not say V'goimer? Because that's what the explanation is here. Rashi's Kenala Filunit Meramis. Rashi has said doesn't even say V'goimer. He doesn't even hint to the rest of the pasuk. Why does Rashi Lama Negara? We're not just explaining why lose out. Why lose out? And we should be able to make the korban. That's what it seems. Yizra Kadam. So why does Rashi just quote Lama Negara? Number two, Vosok Rashi. Rashi first thing says, Rashi says, Omar Lohem. And when they said Lama Negara, Omar Lohem ain't kochim krevim betuma. So Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, well, you can't bring the kochim betuma. Oh, wait a minute. Das ist doch ein Dover Apostel, was euch sei, haben sicher gewusst. That they didn't need Moshe Rabbeinu to tell them ain't kochim krevim betuma. They knew that. That's obvious. Kinal Sifalev, they said, Anachnu tmeim lenefesh odom. They knew that. So we're saying Lama Nigora, and Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, no, you can't bring it, but they already said to themselves that Lama Nigora, that ain't kochim, that Anachnu tmeim lenefesh odom. Hat Rashi gedacht, ohne Berusha gleich mit Zeir Taina. So Rashi should have started Lama Nigora, Amrun lo yizorek adam chulu. Not to tell us that you can't do that, but we know we're starting. The Lama Negara starts after we already know that you can bring a betuma. So they should have started with the argument Amrun lo yizorek adam chulu. And let the blood be sprinkled by the Kohanim Torah. Mefarshim learn this. They explain Adosot say Moshe Frier gesagt that this is what Moshe Rabbeinu told them already before. B'shas hot zei nit gelost brengen dem Pesach. Here, this pasuk here is talking about after they brought the Pesach. They said Lama Nigora, but there was something that took place before it. So this Moshe Rabbeinu told them before. He didn't allow them to bring the Pesach before. Was the that's why they came later on with the argument Lama Nigora. Unser Taine Lama Nigora is gekommen der noch. And then they come with the argument Lama Nigora later on. Yizrek Adam. So there's like two parts basically. Omar Lahem and Kochim Krevim Betuma. That was Moshe Rabbeinu told them at the beginning. And then they came back and said later on, but Lama Nigora, we have a way out. Why don't you sprinkle the blood for the Tameh and then we can eat? Aber from Pashtus, Hemshech Losha Rashi is mashma, but from the simple flow, the way Rashi is mashma, as Omar Lohem and Kochim is gekumen as answer if Lama Nigora. That came an answer to Lama Nigora, not that he told him that before. That and then came the a second question. Let them sprinkle the blood. The first he answered Ein Kochim. That is answering Lama Nigora. And then they said, Yizrak Adam Aleinu, as Rashi explained, and let it be eaten by the Kohanim. Is that move on? So with that understood, Aleph. So in Bos Bashtei de Shaila, Lama Nigora. So I understand. So what is the initial question of Lama Nigora? Before explaining it, let us drink the blood. We know Lama Nigora, as the Rebbe asked in the beginning. Why did they have that question? And we also don't understand. What did Moshe Rabbeinu enlighten them, give them the novel in his response? That's something which is obvious. So this first part in Rashi, Lama Negora, why did they ask the question? Before the argument of Yizrek Adam, what's the question? Rashi seems to say there's two parts to it. Lama Negora Adam. So what's the question? What do we need and what's the answer? What's the big deal with the answer? It's obvious. Ba'id Beis from Vanant Nemt Rashi, where does Rashi know that there was a two questions over here? Lama Nigora, and he tells the main Kraven Betuma. And next there Yikorev, how does Rashi know in Pshutush Mikra this whole double question? Adois given nit ein shaila. That there was not just one question. Lama Nigora lebil tehakrev goimer. Why should we lose out? Nor Ashakla v'tari yitzushazev Moshe. Rashi tells us here there was a debate over here going on, a question and answer with Moshe. Freir the shaila Lama Nigora. First, the question was, why should we lose out? The noch shuvas Moshe ain't kachim. Moshe, they asked the question, and Moshe hasn't kachim. And then there's a second question, Yisra Kadam Chulu. How do we know there's two parts over here? It just says one time, Lama Nigora Levilti Hakriv. So first of all, we don't understand the first question and answer, and we don't even know why there is a two question and answer. Beis Gimel. The third question is, so he says, Yizrek Adam Aleinu b'kahanim tahirim. What does that have? We're teaching now the halachas of who is allowed to sprinkle the blood, the kahanim tahirim. That's who do it all the time. That wasn't the issue here. When they're not teaching us the halacha. What are they teaching? What is they telling us when they're saying they should sprinkle it with the kahanim tahirim? Let's say that they were under the view that they can bring the Pesach Betuma because they'll eat it later if they're Torah or there's somebody else going to eat it. Not only sprinkling the blood, they thought that they can eat. Let's say that they were thinking that they can eat the Pesach. Is the Pashta Zrikas Hadam Agama Mizbeach? But that's obvious. Who is the one that's going to sprinkle the blood in Mizbeach? That is done through the Kahanim. They don't sprinkle the blood. It's the Kahanim. What does Rashi add? They should say Yizrek Adam v'yochal habasar litmeim or l'tahirim according to the Girsa, what we were saying now. So this whole idea b'kahanim tahirim seems necessary, and especially the Rebbe says in the Sifri it doesn't say kahanim tahirim. Lachmer pliya. The surprising is the Werter stehen nit in Sifri. Nor ze zayin no hisofes bir for Rashi. This is an additional explanation for Rashi. Is tamua, so we don't understand. Was felt in them inyan Yizrek Adam Oleinu. What is missing in this sentence? Let the blood sprinkled for us, without adding the word b'kahanim toirim. But Rashi adds b'kahanim toirim. So the Rebbe basically asks three diyukim in the Rashi. Number one, why does Rashi just bring a quote from the Pasuk Loma Nigora? Seems that the Rashi is explaining lahakriv. So why does Rashi not even say goimer? Number two, Rashi talks about a whole debate going on here. Number two, the first part of the question is an obvious question. And the Rebbe brings down that this was two part, but in Rashi, the Rebbe doesn't accept that. It's one. So why is Rashi Bechlal? First of all, what's the question, the answer? We don't understand. And we don't understand where Rashi knows that there's two things going on over here. So that's the second. In the second question, there's two parts to it. And the third question is, what does Rashi mean with Kahanim Toirim? All these diyukim are going to be the basis of the insight and the explanation of the Rebbe that follows. The Rebbe explains a gewaltige chiddush, that really the pasuk is telling us two things. One thing is loma nigora, stop, and then a second aspect, lebilti hakriv es korban Hashem. The Rebbe points to the fact that the whole time it talks about making Pesach. Making Pesach, asiyas ha-Pesach, doesn't talk about korban Pesach, making Pesach. Seems to be that there was just an inyan, as the Rebbe will explain later on, just about making Pesach. But after Moshe Rabbeinu said to them, they said Loma Nigora, because they thought this is not a korban. Tuma shouldn't stop us from eating. This is not a korban. This is Maisa Pesach. And Moshe Rabbeinu answered them, no, this is a korban. Ein kochim. That's Moshe Rabbeinu's response. So then comes the second in lahakriv korban Hashem. So why can they not still bring the korban Hashem, even though Yizrek Aleinu Hadam, as the Rebbe will explain? Dalet, the Vir B'chol Zeh. Explaining all this. Learning the posik Loma Nigora Lebilti Hakriv Es Korban Hashem B'moyadei. When we learn this verse, why should we lose out so as not to bring the korban of Hashem in the time of Pesach? Teltzich Glach de Shaila. So immediately there's a question in the pasuk. There's a change of lashon here. Lebilti hikriv es korban Hashem. Frier nutzt the Torah kiseder dem lashon asiyas haPesach. The Torah uses the lashon making Pesach. It doesn't use the lashon of korban. V'yasu b'nei Yisrael es haPesach. They should make the Pesach. Tasu oisei should do it. Lasu es haPesach, to make the Pesach. V'yasu es haPesach. Lo yochel lasu Pesach, talking about making. All about doing the Pesach. How come those who were tummy to a person mishane given and gesagt, they changed and they said nit lebilti asois Pesach. They didn't say lo mani lo said nor lebilti hikriv es korban Hashem. They changed now. Now they're saying that it's not about making the Pesach, it's about hikriv korban Hashem. So something happened over here before when it was the Siyasa Pesach, and now they're saying they can bring the korban. Is the full mashma? So from this it appears that this is a matter that just came anew over here. Before they just knew that there is making Pesach. We didn't know about a korban Pesach. Und it's is bazeh geworden a chidush, and now it became a novelty as korban Pesach is an inyan von hikriv as korban havaya. The korban Pesach, the offering is not making a Pesach, but it became a korban havaya. Kedlakama sivei baruch, as we'll explain the baruch. The Rebbe will explain that actually in Mitzrayim there was no korban there Pesach. They were just supposed to take the sheep and tie it to the bed and then sprinkle the blood on the doorposts. And it had nothing to do with a korban over there. It wasn't directly a korban. Here the Torah says to make it the second time in the desert, like the first time. They didn't thought that this wasn't a korban. This has to do with especially the Pesach to follow what they did the first year, as the Rebbe will explain later, Baruch. So, but what happened over here that changed their mind? This is how Rashi knows that there was a discussion going on. Which matter came in between? From where they learned this novelty, all of a sudden they're saying this is not making a Pesach. This is hikriv l'bil hikriv. Is Rashi maitiv from pasuk? Rashi quotes from the verse Lo Manigora. Unzogt Omar lahem ein kochim kreivim betumah. They told him we can be good. They responded. When Rashi quotes the words Loma Negora without saying the Goymer, Rashi makes it very clear. As Loma Negora is given it's not Loma Negora Goymer. No, Loma Negora is it's a stop. It's a question by itself. Was if der Scheile zum Beispiel geantwortet, ein Kotschim Krevim Betuma. Because up till now they didn't know that it was a Kotschim Krevim. They didn't know it's a Korban Hashem. First, Lama Nigora, he says, ein Kotschim Krevim Betuma. B'shas Moshe hat sie gesagt dem Entfer. And when Moshe told them this answer, as ein Kotschim Krevim Betuma, that you can't bring Kotschim to Betuma, so now we're talking about Kotschim. And this is what Moshe responded. So they answered, but saying it's Chadish geworden. So then they were enlightened. They were new now as Pesach is an inyan for Nakrovas Kotschim. Korban Hashem. They knew that that's an aspect of bringing Kotschim Korban Hashem. Hat der Chidush mechadish geworden bei sei die zweite Scheile. So this novelty, so this brought them to the second question. So now they thought they can eat it because it's not even a korban. He says you can't eat it because it's a korban. So now they have a second question. Since you cannot bring the korban Hashem, it's a korban. Is Yizrek Adam Aleinu Chul, at least let us sprinkle the blood and let the meat be eaten by Tahirim. Or we'll see, as the Rebbe will explain. Right, Meir? Is verantwortlich, dass Rashi is Moisiv, the Werter Yizrek Chulu, Bekohanim Teirim. Now we understand what Rashi adds to Kohanim Teirim. Because before, you didn't need the sprinkling of the blood Bekohanim Teirim, it wasn't the Korban. Rashi says now, let's do Bekohanim Teirim now, because it's a Korban now. So this has been Nischadish now in this discussion. They're saying now a new thing, Yizrek Aleinu the Korban. The mid is Rashi Madgis, as Erst Itz is by Zenis Chadish geworden. It's just now that it became that idea as Pesach is a Korban Avaya Kotchim, that is Kotchim. But for the Zrike Bekanim Toirim, that requires sprinkle Bekanim Toirim. Mashenkin freer, but before this they didn't need Kahanim Toirim. Based on Tainin Loma Nigora, when they were arguing Loma Nigora, why lose out? Haben sie gerechnet, as Korban Pesach is not kein Korban Hashem. They thought that the offering of Pesach is not the Korban Hashem, does not require Kahanim Tohirim to sprinkle. Was b'meila fodert es nit kein Zrik al Gaba Mizbech b'Kahanim Tohirim, and therefore it does not require, if it's not a Korban of Hashem, it's not Kotchim, it doesn't require sprinkling on the Mizbech with Kahanim Tohirim. Und the Faram sie gehalten, and that's why they thought as they make us bring in betuma, that they can bring in betuma. They didn't know that this is a status of a korban, so they wanted to bring it, even though they're tummy. They wanted to bring it and eat it with the tummy. Didn't matter to them. Moshe Rabbeinu says no, it's a korban Hashem, but a korban Hashem they have another argument. We need kahanim toirim, yes. But still, let's eat it by the Tahirim or the Tmeim, as the Rebbe will explain. Now, the Rebbe is going to explain what's going on over here. But for now, we explained several points. We explained the debate that's going on. Loma Nigora is one. Moshe Rabbeinu adds them Ein Kotchim Krevim because they didn't realize that it's Kotchim. And so he says, okay, let's sprinkle the blood, the Tahirim, and then the meat will be eaten by the Kohanim Tohirim, because now the meat will eat by the Tmeim, by the Tohirim, as we'll see now in the Hey. That's buried in them. Explanation ubahagdim. By introduction, the Rebbe is going to argue that the Korban Pesach that they brought in Mitzrayim was not a Korban Hashem, and they thought that this Korban that follows is the same status as the Korban Pesach. Is not a Korban Hashem. It's a Korban Pesach, but it's not a Korban Hashem. It's not Kotchim. Al derech Pshat, a Pesach Mitzrayim nit gehat can get it from Korban. According to the Pshat, it wasn't defined. The Pesach Mitzrayim was not defined as a Korban. Al Pipshute shel Mikra is Pesach Mitzrayim given a mitzvah miyuchedes. The simple meaning of the pasuk, Pesach Mitzrayim was a special mitzvah to shecht naseh, to slaughter a sheep, when esnim in b'lei Pesach, and to eat it on the night of Pesach, tzliyesh, roasted by the fire, zusammen mit matzahs umroidim, together with the matzahs and the bitter herbs. Besuloi, and nothing more. There's not a korban. Dabei is nicht gewähnt, kein Inyan v'tzivu von akrovas korban Hashem. Here, there was no idea, there was no command to bring a korban to Hashem. We find in those was the gedarf zayin v'lochach ben Adam. They took from the blood, v'nos nashte hamezuzah, they put it on the doorposts. In Mitzrayim gomer is nicht gewähnt al derech v'zrikas Adam al hamizbeach. That's not similar to sprinkling the. There's no mizbeach there, but this sprinkling the blood on the door is not the same, similar to sprinkling the blood on the mizbeach. Nor kemefurish b'kra, but as the pasuk says, tzumachon an oisei from bayis. That was meant to make a sign on the house. As b'shaz v'avarti beretz Mitzrayim. V'ikesi gomer. When Hashem will go over in the land of Egypt, and He will smite. V'ra'isa sadom, and I'll see the blood gomer. V'sachti aleichem. Then the Eibishter will jump over them. It had a purpose. It wasn't the Adam and the Mizbeach. It wasn't similar to that. It was a special purpose for them to have the sign on the door, so Hashem will jump over. But the Farge findet man nicht bei Pesach Mitzrayim as anrufen werden b'shem korban. That's why Pesach Mitzrayim we don't find it being called by the name of korban. It's not called a korban. Nor blois b'shem zevach. It's called zevach. Amartem zevach pesachu. It's an offering. It's a shechtig Pesach. Was the word zevach? Shechtig could mean any. Nicht dafka korban Hashem. It doesn't mean necessarily a korban to Hashem. Nor jeder shchita la'achila wird gerufen zevach. Every time you're shechting to eat, it's called a zevach. So we don't see that the Pesach in Pshat was a korban. Und das ist even the Taine von the Tmein Nefesh Odom. So this was the argument. Why? So we know that was the Pesach Mitzrayim. Here we are dealing with the second year after they left Egypt. Is blois given a Pesach. Before this, there was only one Pesach. The Pesach Mitzrayim is the Funfa, so there was no other Pesach. So which Pesach are they supposed to follow? The Funfa Standik, al Bishas mit Ongizog. That when they were instructed, the Yasu b'nei Yisrael sa Pesach b'Moyadei, that the Yidden should do the Pesach in the time, like all the statutes and all the laws should make it. Means what does gemeint as the Pesach Midbar. The Pesach they brought in the Midbar will sign in themselves and from together from Pesach Mitzrayim. It should be in the same way, same definition as the Pesach Mitzrayim. Pesach Mitzrayim wasn't a korban. This is not a korban Hashem either. Especially as Rashi writes earlier. That the Eibishter basically made this mitzvah of Korban Pesach when they come to the land. And the Midbar, they only were obligated in one Pesach that they made. Based on the Eibishter. This doesn't have this. It was unique, even in that they were only told specially, but the whole Pesach was to be done in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, it makes sense to say the Pesach Midbar hat nicht gehad dem Keder from Pesach Deus. That the Pesach they brought in the desert did not have the definition of the Pesach that was in the generation. That's connected to coming to the land. Over there is a Korban Hashem, but here it doesn't have a Korban Hashem. Mercy is given a Hemshech from Pesach Mitzrayim. This was a continuation. That's what it seems to make sense simply. It was a continuation of Pesach Mitzrayim by these who made the Pesach Mitzrayim. They made the second year of Pesach in the same way. So based on this, from the Anoshman al Gitainet, the above people, they argued, Darfman Zogun. So we have to say, as the Tzivu v'yaseh b'nei Yisrael sa-Pesach ben Meyadei, when the Torah tells us to make the Pesach in time, meint es hier sa-Pesach, Punkt wie Pesach Mitzrayim. It's just the same Pesach Mitzrayim. Doch is nicht kein Korban. That's not a Korban. Was wird gebracht, a gab Mizbeach, that is brought on the Mizbeach. Not other of it. But on the contrary, Yederer, afilu tmeim, if they were unclean, is the Ve'ech Haseh, would bring the Shep, would shecht as a sheep, Beisei, Leben Zain Mashke V'Amezuz is next to his lintel and doorpost where he's going to sprinkle the blood. When Esther's bebase, Dafka has to eat it in his home, Dafka, not in the Mizbeach, not in the anywhere. He has to eat it together, and just like punkt, and just like Veres Matzah Morer, eating Matzah Morer. She'enim Kachim Klauer, not Kachim at all. So this Pesach, this Shech that he ate is not Kachim. Can eat it betumah. Like everybody brought it, even if they were tummy. Und der Riber, wenn Moshe hat say, nicht gelosen, sich zum Status sein in der Pzisa Pesach. But Moshe doesn't allow them to participate in making the Pesach. So they came with the So they came with the argument, why should we lose out? Und das hat Moshe say mechadish gewend. And Moshe came up with that idea and told them, Ein kochim kreven betumah. Kochim cannot bring betumah. Pesach is nit blois azevach. It is not just an offering, a shechting, nor kochim was very nikra v'gaba mizbech. This is kochim, which are offered on top of the mizbech. Ubemela is ayer shaila be'inyan. So your question in the matter was that answer is ein kochim krevim betuma. And therefore, you're asking Loma Negora. You can't, this is not just a Zavach, this is actually a Korban. Is Kochim cannot be brought betuma. So that was the first question. So now we understand already the second question. Yizrek hadam aleinu chulu v'yochal abosar l'tahirim. Let the blood be sprinkled on it and let them be eaten for the Torah. And since they were to him, darf man sagen, als Rashi meint damit andere Tehorim kinal sieve base. So who was the Tehorim? It means other. Rashi doesn't say that it was the seventh day or anything of that sort. So they were meetings to be eaten by other people who are Tehorim since their time. The bald as by Pesach Mitzrayim is not given kin inyan fun hakrova laHashem. Since by the Pesach before in Mitzrayim it was not an offering to Hashem. Al gabi hamizbeach, there was no mizbeach. Nor blois the mitzvah of an atzmi for zevach v'achilas Pesach was just the mitzvah of eating, of shechting and eating Pesach. The tmeim lenefesh odem gehalten, the ones who were tummy, they were of the view. As those was yet noch hakomas a mishkan. The fact that now that there is a mishkan, he says I get the korban. Now it became a korban. It does have zugi kumener bazunderer inyan. That's an additional something that was added now. We still have what we have before. Velchet is nit gereya. That doesn't diminish. Upshita nitshel doesn't negate the mitzvah from achilas haPesach. The mitzvah eating Pesach. So it is now changed. He told them that there is a korban because we have the, but why should we take away from the mitzvah we had it the year before by the first Pesach that everybody ate, whether you're Tameh or not? So they should not negate the mitzvah of Achilas HaPesach. This is given by Pesach Bisi, as it was till now. Ufavozol den werden Ashinu b'frat hashlila in mitzvah achilas Pesach. So why should we change and negate the mitzvah of eating the Pesach, which they would eat when they were tamei? Okay, so you don't want us to bring the korban. Okay, we can bring the korban, but why not eat it? Why lose out and not eat it? Not eat it. Kumtois. Why should we lose out of not eating the Pesach? Kumtois. As in Pesach and Franz Febers under in that in Pesach there are two separate matters. They don't hinge. There could be two aspects, two separate. It's a korban and there's eating. There's two things. Aleph, me bringt a korban Hashem auf dem Mizbech, al zecher v'edoy of an inyan from Gulas Mitzrayim. So we bring a korban to Hashem on the Mizbech to remembering and thanking Hashem for the idea of redemption of Mitzrayim. Upesach Hashem. Upesach Hashem jumped over. So to thank Hashem, we bring a korban to Hashem. It's one aspect. There's the mitzvah von Achilas HaPesach b'leil tezvov. There's the mitzvah of eating Pesach and b'leil tezvov. Nit al Achilas korban davke, not as eating a korban. But al derech with the mitzvah von Achilas matzah morer. Eating matzah morer, eating also the Pesach. Und das haben sie getimet, and this is the argument. Lebilti hikriv es korban Hashem b'mayadei. Not to bring the korban Hashem v'bal, as der inyan was Pesach is korban la Hashem. Is a besonder inyan von Achilas HaPesach. Since that the korban Hashem is something different, separate than the idea of eating the Pesach, is rikrak adam oleinu v'yochel abosel l'toirim. Should eat l'toirim. Fal people zayin the korban Hashem. Kochim, torun zeh nitesim von dem Pesach. Weil tor mitor nitesim ken kochim, not eat kochim. U'b'meila yochel abosel l'toirim acherim. And they will eat the toirim. But they want really is that they should be able to eat. Favozon ze oben dafen verfällen the 9 zu kumen min in Pesach. La'akriv es kol Hashem b'moedei. Was can getan werden beli zera reingehen in Mishkan. That doesn't need them going into the Mishkan. Ubemela yizrek adam aleinu v'kahanim toirim. Their argument was let the kahanim toirim sprinkle the blood for us. Not as a part. So Mela as a korban. They can't eat it. Okay, it's kachim now. Kachim. But why should they lose out of the etzem, the mitzvah of the bringing of a Pesach? That part of the Pesach that doesn't need them to go into the Mishkan. Yizrek aleinu adam aleinu v'kahanim toirim.